Welcome, dreamers, to tonight's story, a tale woven with whispers and old magic. Let the world around you fade as we journey together to a quiet, forgotten village where secrets slumber beneath the roots of an ancient oak. As you relax and let go of the day, imagine the soft rustling of leaves in the night, the cool touch of moss underfoot, and the feeling of something timeless, watching, waiting. Close your eyes and drift with me as we follow young Mira into the heart of a mystery, a place where the ordinary touches the extraordinary. Let the words wrap around you like a gentle lullaby, guiding you to a peaceful sleep. In the forgotten corner of a nameless village, where the air hung thick with tales and silence, stood an oak tree of impossible age and size. Its bark, twisted and lined like an old man's hands, seemed to hold within it countless years and secrets. No one dared to say how long it had been there, watching over the village, observing the passing of generations like a silent, ancient guardian. Children would gaze up at its sprawling branches, held back by whispered warnings and half-remembered stories. The adults never spoke of the oak in detail, only sparing a word or two as they passed by, muttering phrases like, "Ancient things are best left alone." But Mira was no ordinary child. Restless and bright-eyed, she had always felt a pull toward the forest. She sensed something alive within those silent woods, something waiting. Her parents had scolded her countless times, warning her of dangers in the shadows. But she knew that whatever mystery lay hidden beyond the trees had chosen her, and not the other way around. Every day, as dusk slipped its fingers over the village, Mira would pause at her window, watching the old oak silhouette against the sky. Sometimes, she thought she saw its branches move, shifting as if reaching out to her in invitation. One evening, as the last embers of sunlight faded into twilight, Mira slipped quietly from her home and made her way to the forest. The air was thick with the scent of moss and damp earth, a green darkness that seemed to breathe. Each step brought her closer to the ancient oak, its looming form now close enough to touch. She ran her fingers along the bark, feeling the roughness beneath her skin. And then it happened. A faint whisper, too soft to make out at first, seemed to rise from within the tree itself. "Mira," it murmured, the sound stretching her name like an echo. She froze, her heart pounding as the tree spoke again, the whisper brushing against her ears like the rustle of leaves in a distant storm. "Mira," it repeated, soft and yet insistent, as if the very roots of the oak were calling to her. The world seemed to hold its breath as she leaned closer. And there, at the base of the tree, hidden within a large, twisted knot, she noticed something strange. It was a hollow, small enough to go unnoticed by anyone who wasn't looking for it. yet deep enough to catch her curiosity. She reached into the hollow, feeling the smoothness of the wood beneath her fingertips, and then, suddenly, her hand met something cool and metallic. She drew back, finding a faint outline of a door within the knot of the tree. Her pulse quickened, her eyes widening as she traced its edges with trembling fingers. She had never seen anything like it, and in her heart she knew. This was something beyond her world, something that waited patiently for her to find it. With a deep breath, she pressed her palm against the center of the door. The tree seemed to shiver, a barely perceptible movement, and then, as if by magic, the wood shifted and the small door creaked open. A faint light, soft and shimmering, spilled out, illuminating her face in an ethereal glow. Mira's breath caught. She could feel the pulse of something alive, something ancient, and her body tingled with the thrill and fear of the unknown. There was a silence, a deep, resonant silence that enveloped her as she peered into the glowing doorway. She could make out the faint outline of a passage beyond, disappearing into shadows and mist. The air within the portal was thick, carrying scents that were foreign yet strangely familiar, like memories from a dream. She felt a pull, an irresistible tug at her very core, urging her forward, urging her to step into the light. And yet, a small part of her hesitated, a warning echoing faintly in the back of her mind. She knew instinctively that if she crossed that threshold, she would leave behind the life she knew, the world of warm beds and gentle voices. She would step into something wilder, older, a world that held no regard for human notions of safety and comfort. But curiosity overpowered caution. Mira took one last look at the quiet forest, the darkening sky overhead. And then, with a steadying breath, she stepped forward. The light enveloped her, bright and blinding, and for a brief moment, everything dissolved. The village, the oak, the forest. When she reached the other side, the owl watched her with a silent approval, a glint of something almost like recognition in its luminous eyes. Without a sound, it turned and glided further into the mist, and Mira followed. Her footsteps hushed against the strange, yielding earth beneath her. They walked deeper into the mist, the landscape shifting subtly around them, shapes emerging and dissolving like fragments of an ancient dream. The hidden realm unfolded before her, its secrets layered like shadows upon shadows, drawing her further from the world she had known, and into the heart of a place that felt boundless, alive, and unendingly mysterious. The hidden realm stretched out before Mira like a vast, breathing tapestry of shadows and light. A place where the boundaries of form and substance seemed to shift with each breath. The owl creature led her deeper into the heart of this mysterious world, its silent presence both a comfort and a warning. Mira was painfully aware of how fragile she was here, how human, and yet something within her felt alive with wonder, as though her heart had awakened to an ancient rhythm that pulsed through the land itself. As they ventured further, Mira felt the land begin to change around her. The air grew denser, carrying a soft luminescence that seemed to hang in the mist like suspended stars. Strange flora emerged from the shadows. Trees with crystalline bark that shimmered with a faint opalescent glow. Their branches hung with vines that sparkled like frost. Beneath them, flowers bloomed with colors she had never seen, petals unfolding in hues that shifted with each flicker of the mist. The owl slowed its pace, allowing Mira to absorb the strange beauty around her. The air hummed with whispers, soft fragmented voices that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere, overlapping in a language she couldn't understand. It felt as if the land itself was speaking to her, filling her mind with fragments of forgotten stories, dreams that hung in the air like threads waiting to be woven together. As she walked, her eyes caught sight of movement in the shadows. There, beyond the reach of the faint light, were creatures unlike any she had ever seen. A horned figure, tall and slender, watched her with eyes like polished obsidian, its gaze piercing and unreadable. Behind it, half hidden by a thicket of strange, spindly trees, a cluster of sprites hovered, their tiny bodies aglow with a pale silvery light. They flickered like embers, their wings shimmering as they drifted closer, drawn by her presence. One of the sprites, braver than the rest, darted forward, hovering just inches from Mira's face. It was a delicate creature, its tiny form transparent, almost ethereal, with eyes that shone like drops of dew. For a moment, they simply regarded one another in silence, a quiet understanding passing between them. The sprite reached out, its tiny hand brushing her cheek, leaving a faint tingling warmth where it touched her skin. Then, as if startled by its own boldness, it darted back into the shadows, vanishing into the mist with the others. The owl led her onward, deeper still, until they came upon a clearing ringed by towering stones. These stones were ancient, their surfaces etched with symbols that pulsed faintly, as if alive with a secret energy. In the center of the clearing, an intricate pattern had been carved into the earth, a circle within circles, woven with lines that seemed to shift and shimmer as Mira looked at them. She felt a pull toward the center, an invisible thread tugging her forward, as if the earth itself were calling to her. But as she stepped into the clearing, a shadow shifted near the stones, and a figure emerged, a tall, graceful being cloaked in robes that seemed woven from the mist itself. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, but Mira could feel its eyes upon her, an intense, ancient gaze that filled her with a mixture of awe and fear. The being raised a hand, and a voice, deep and resonant, fill the clearing. You have crossed into the realm of the hidden ones, where few are permitted and fewer still are welcomed. Your presence has not gone unnoticed. Mira felt her heart race, her mind scrambling for words, for some explanation or apology. But the figure continued before she could speak. "We are the guardians of this realm," it said, its voice like the echo of distant thunder. "And our world is bound by laws older than the mountains and the stars. You, a child of the mortal world, are a disruption to the balance of this land." The owl creature remained by her side, its gaze unblinking as if to reassure her. Mira took a steadying breath, meeting the shadowed figure's gaze with all the courage she could muster. "I didn't mean to disturb anything," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I was called here. The tree, it opened a door, all falling away as she crossed the threshold into the unknown. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving the ancient oak silent once more, its secret hidden once again in the shadows of the woods. The world Mira left behind faded like the final notes of a haunting song, replaced by something vast, quiet, and heavy with mystery. As her vision cleared, she found herself standing on the edge of a strange and unfamiliar land, enveloped in mist that clung to her skin like delicate webs. The air was thick, alive with the scent of damp earth and distant rain, mingling with something indefinably ancient. A fragrance, like the last breath of fallen leaves, caught and preserved in the shadows of time. The sky above her held neither sun nor stars, only a dim silver-grey light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. Mira turned, but there was no sign of the oak tree or the forest she'd left behind. The portal had closed, vanishing into the mist, leaving her alone in this strange realm that felt at once eternal and utterly unknowable. A soft rustle sounded nearby, and Mira's gaze shifted. Out of the shadows, a creature emerged, silent and watchful. It looked like an owl, yet not quite. Its body was sleek and elongated, its feathers a dark mottled silver that seemed to shift with the mist. Its eyes were wide and luminescent, filled with an intelligence that sent a shiver down her spine. The owl creature regarded her with an intensity that bordered on unsettling, as if it were peering into the deepest parts of her, reading her fears and secrets. After a long silent moment, it turned and began to glide forward, its movements smooth and graceful, gliding as if floating above the ground. Without thinking, Mira followed, drawn forward as though tethered by some invisible thread. Every step she took felt weighted, like moving through water, and the mist seemed to thicken around her, curling in languid tendrils that clung to her ankles and wrists, slowing her movements, urging her to linger. They walked in silence, the owl leading her through landscapes that felt surreal, as if belonging to a dream she'd once forgotten. Towering trees, their bark smooth as polished stone, stretched endlessly above her, their branches intertwined like webs spun from shadows. Strange, delicate flowers grew in the hollows of the roots, glowing faintly with colors Mira had no name for. She could sense hidden eyes watching her from the dark, shapes shifting in the periphery of her vision, vanishing the moment she tried to look directly at them. The owl led her deeper, through glades of luminous plants and streams that glimmered with an inner light, their waters alive with strange creatures. She caught glimpses of beings that defied explanation, small, flitting shapes that hovered in the air like sparks, and others that moved within the shadows with a liquid grace, their forms shifting and dissolving as though made from the very mist itself. Some of them watched her with curiosity, while others kept their distance, fading back into the shadows as she approached. Eventually, the owl led her to the edge of a shimmering river that seemed to hum with a faint musical resonance. The water sparkled with a light that came from within, casting reflections that danced and flickered across the misty landscape. The owl turned to her then, its luminous eyes meeting hers. And for a moment, Mira thought she could hear its voice, not as words, but as thoughts, quiet and distant, like whispers carried on the wind. You have crossed into the hidden realm, where time bends and life takes shapes unknown to your world, the owl seemed to say, the words weaving through her mind like a song she could almost understand. Few have entered, and fewer still have returned unchanged. Mira felt a shiver course through her, a mixture of wonder and fear. She wanted to ask questions, to understand the mysteries of this world, to know what it wanted from her. But the owl offered no answers, only that deep, searching gaze that made her feel as though she were transparent. A creature as exposed as the river running beside her. Without warning, the owl took flight, gliding across the river with a graceful sweep of its wings. Mira watched, entranced, as it settled on the opposite bank, its eyes fixed on her as if beckoning her to follow. She hesitated, looking down at the river that separated them, its surface shimmering like liquid moonlight. Though shallow, the water radiated a cold that felt almost sentient, as though it were testing her resolve, daring her to step forward. She took a steadying breath, her heart pounding as she placed one foot into the river, feeling the chill seep into her bones. The water lapped around her ankles, cold and oddly heavy. And with each step, the sensation intensified, a tingling numbness that seemed to echo through her veins, filling her with both fear and exhilaration. The figure seemed to consider her words, its head tilting slightly, the faintest glimmer of curiosity visible beneath its hood. After a long silent pause, it spoke again. The tree's door does not open by chance. Perhaps it saw something in you, a flicker of understanding, a heart unbound by fear. The figure gestured to the pattern carved into the ground. But you must prove yourself, human child, if you are to remain in this world. For we do not welcome the eyes of the outside lightly. With a sweeping motion, the figure extended a slender arm toward the intricate circles at Mira's feet. You will be tested, it intoned. Not in strength or in cunning, but in the purity of your heart and the depth of your resolve. Only those who can keep the secrets of this realm and understand its language may walk freely among us. The owl creature turned to Mira, its glowing eyes conveying a silent message, urging her to step forward. Trembling, she looked down at the shifting circles, each line seemingly alive, twisting and weaving beneath her feet like a river of light. A strange calm settled over her, as if she had waited her whole life for this moment. She stepped into the center of the pattern, the symbols beneath her feet glowing brighter, filling the air with a soft, humming energy. She could feel it seeping into her, wrapping around her heart and mind, whispering secrets that danced just beyond her understanding. The figure watched her, its gaze sharp and unyielding. Your trials begin here, child of the mortal world, and remember, once begun, the path cannot be undone. The air was thick with expectancy, vibrating softly as if holding its breath. Mira stood within the intricate circle, feeling the faint pulse of magic weave around her, as if the very ground beneath her feet was alive. The shadowed figure watched in silence, and somewhere above, the owl creature circled, its luminous eyes fixed upon her. She was alone now, but the presence of the realm itself pressed in on her, ancient and watchful, waiting to see if she would falter. Without warning, the earth shifted beneath her and the world blurred. When her vision cleared, Mira found herself in a different place altogether. She stood on the edge of a dark, still lake, its surface as smooth as glass, reflecting the silver-grey sky above. Shadows rippled at its edges, and the air was filled with a silence so profound it seemed almost tangible, pressing against her skin like the weight of unseen eyes. A soft voice, barely more than a whisper, broke the silence. It came from the lake itself, a distant murmur that floated toward her like the ghost of a forgotten song. "Tell me, child," it asked, "what do you seek in this realm? What brought you to our hidden shores?" Mira swallowed, feeling the question wrap around her like a vine, binding her to the truth she had barely admitted to herself. She knew instinctively that this was the first of her trials, a test of her heart and her intentions. I don't know," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was drawn here, called by something I don't understand. But now that I'm here, I think I want to see what lies beyond the shadows, to understand the secrets of this place. I want to know what you are, what all of this is." For a moment, There was only silence. Then, a figure rose from the lake, a translucent shape with eyes like pools of darkness, its form shifting like water caught in moonlight. It watched her, its gaze piercing and solemn, and then slowly it nodded, as if satisfied by her answer. "Curiosity is a powerful thing," it murmured, its voice like a breeze brushing over the lake's surface. "But it is also dangerous. Remember this as you go forward." The figure dissolved back into the water, leaving Mira alone. She barely had time to process the encounter before the scene shifted once again, the lake vanishing in a haze of mist. She blinked, and when she opened her eyes, she found herself in a dense forest, the trees towering above her like sentinels. Their leaves whispered softly, filling the air with a low, susurrating murmur that sent a chill down her spine. The owl creature appeared before her, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling brightness. It regarded her silently for a moment, then lifted one wing, pointing to a dark, winding path that led deeper into the forest. "This is your second trial," the owl's voice echoed in her mind, not spoken but felt, as if it had drifted directly into her thoughts. "You must walk the path without fear, for only those who face the shadows may see the light." Mira took a deep breath, steeling herself before stepping onto the path. The forest closed around her, each step pulling her deeper into a world where light barely penetrated, and shadows stretched long and thin. Strange shapes flitted at the edges of her vision, and soft, eerie sounds filled the air. A rustling of leaves, the snap of twigs, and occasionally the low, mournful call of something hidden in the dark. Her heart hammered in her chest, but she forced herself to keep moving, her feet pressing forward one step at a time. The shadows grew thicker, almost tangible, until she felt as though she were walking through water, her body heavy and slow. She fought against the fear that clawed at her, focusing instead on the faint glow of the owl creature's eyes in the distance, guiding her forward like twin stars in a night sky. Finally, she emerged from the darkness, stepping into a clearing bathed in soft silvery light. She breathed a sigh of relief, her chest loosening as the shadows fell away. The owl watched her, its expression unreadable, and she felt a strange warmth bloom in her heart, as if she had passed an invisible threshold, one known only to the creatures of this realm. Without a word, the owl turned and led her to the edge of the clearing, where a small, shimmering pool lay nestled among the roots of a massive tree. Its surface was still, reflecting the sky above, and as she gazed into its depth, she saw her own face staring back, pale and weary, but resolute. "This is the final trial," the owl intoned, its voice a soft murmur. "Look into the water and see yourself as you truly are. Only by accepting your reflection can you carry the burden of our secrets." Mira knelt by the pool, her heart racing. She looked into her reflection, expecting to see herself as she always had, but instead she saw 1,000 versions of herself, faces shifting like leaves in the wind. Each one was a different aspect of her, a child filled with wonder, a wanderer lost in shadows, a seeker driven by unquenchable curiosity. In each reflection, she saw something she feared or cherished, pieces of herself she had never fully understood. She saw her own loneliness, her longing for adventure, her hunger for knowledge, and her silent, lingering fears. A tear slipped down her cheek, and as it fell into the pool, the reflection stilled, merging into one face, her own, whole and unbroken. A quiet understanding settled over her, a strange peace that filled the spaces her fears had once occupied. She rose, turning to face the owl, who watched her with a look of approval. "You have passed the trials," it said, its voice softer now, almost kind. "The secrets of our realm will remain with you. But remember, these are not secrets to be shared lightly. You carry them as one who has walked the shadows and emerged whole." The world around her began to blur, the forest and the clearing dissolving into mist. The owl's eyes held her gaze one last time, a promise and a warning in their depths, before it faded into the shadows, leaving her alone as the hidden realm slipped away into memory. The mist swirled around her, thickening until it felt like a cocoon pressing close against her skin. For a moment, Mira could see nothing, hear nothing, as if the entire world had dissolved into silence. Then, with a rush, like the release of a held breath, the mist receded, fading to reveal the familiar outline of the ancient oak, standing still and silent in the twilight. She was back. The forest lay quiet around her, draped in the fading light of evening. The air was cool, filled with the familiar scents of earth and moss, yet Mira sensed that something had changed, not in the world, but in herself. She reached out to touch the rough bark of the oak, feeling its solidity, its age-old presence that seemed in this moment like an old friend. The portal was gone, closed to her now, but she could still feel the faint, lingering pulse of magic in the tree, like the heartbeat of a slumbering giant. Mira stepped back, her fingers brushing her face as if to confirm she was real, that her journey had been more than a strange, vivid dream. She felt different, though, older, as if years had passed rather than hours. Her heart held the weight of the hidden realm's secrets, each one woven into her memory, bound to her by the trials she had endured. The knowledge pulsed within her, as alive as the land she had left behind. Yet it was a knowledge that came with a cost. As she walked back toward the village, the shadows deepened around her, and the trees loomed like quiet sentinels. Every so often, she thought she caught glimpses of movement in the underbrush, a flicker of silvery wings, a glint of eyes watching from the shadows. But when she turned, there was only stillness. The hidden realm felt close, as if it lingered just beyond the edge of sight, a whisper away, always there, but forever out of reach. When she reached the edge of the village, Mira paused, her heart tightening with an ache she couldn't explain. The village lay quiet, its familiar rooftops bathed in the soft glow of lantern light. She could see her home, the faint outline of her family moving inside, unaware of the mysteries that had unfolded within the forest that day. She longed to rush in to tell them everything she had seen, the creatures she had encountered, the trials she had passed. But she knew, with a clarity that felt like the echo of the owl's voice, that these were secrets she must carry alone. The hidden ones had entrusted her with their mysteries, bound her to their world through trials that could never be spoken of. The oak had offered her a gift, a glimpse into a realm beyond imagination. But that gift came with the burden of silence. The moment she crossed that threshold back into her own world, she had become a keeper of secrets, a bridge between two worlds that could never fully meet. Days passed, turning into weeks, and Mira felt the weight of the hidden realm settle deep within her, like a stone sinking to the bottom of a lake. She went about her days as she always had, playing in the fields, helping her family with their tasks. But something in her gaze had changed. She watched the world with a quiet intensity, her eyes drawn to the shifting shadows, to the moments between moments where magic seemed to hide. Her friends would sometimes catch her staring into the forest, her expression distant, and ask her what she was thinking about. But Mira would only smile, a secret smile, and shake her head. Every now and then, she would feel the pull of the old oak, an ache that lingered in her chest like the memory of a dream. She would slip away, drawn back to the edge of the forest, where she would sit at the base of the ancient tree, her hand pressed against its rough bark. She could feel the faint trace of the portal, like a heartbeat beneath her fingertips. But no matter how long she waited, the door remained closed, the whispers silent. As the seasons turned, the hidden realm became a quiet ache within her, a memory that glowed in the back of her mind like embers in a fire. Sometimes, in the hush of twilight, she thought she saw the owl watching her from the shadows, its eyes gleaming with that same ancient wisdom. Other times, she would glimpse small shimmering lights flickering at the forest's edge, tiny sprites that seemed to wink at her before vanishing into the trees. Each sighting felt like a reminder, a gentle acknowledgement of her journey, and a promise that the hidden realm was still there, waiting. And so Mira grew, her life intertwined with a secret that few would ever understand. She learned to carry it like a quiet strength, her heart bound forever to a place beyond the veil of her world. She was both part of her village and apart from it, living in the spaces between. where the ordinary world touched the extraordinary. The villagers, in their unspoken way, began to sense the change in her, though they could not name it. Some said she had become wise beyond her years, that she had the look of someone who had glimpsed things no child should know. Others simply shook their heads, muttering that she had spent too much time in the forest. But Mira smiled and said nothing, knowing that some things were meant to remain hidden. And as the years passed, she continued to return to the old oak, a silent guardian of its secrets, forever bound to the mysteries of the hidden realm, a keeper of whispers, a bearer of magic, and a child forever changed.